Welcome into my perfect offseason. If I was Eric DeCosta, if I was John Harbaugh, these are all the moves that I would make to guarantee a Ravens Super Bowl in the 2025 NFL season. Welcome into the show, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. And you know what, guys? I'm going to ask you to just go ahead and hit that subscribe button because we got a huge offseason coming up. The Ravens, yet again, got short of their Super Bowl goals. So what are they going to do over these next 7 months to make sure that doesn't happen again next season? Ravens Rundown will be here. We'll be bringing the heat all offseason long. So make sure to join us by hitting that sub button. Let's start with the perfect offseason plan, and we're going to start with trading Mark Andrews. Okay, I made a video about that earlier this week, and I want to preface like I did on that. I'm not saying trade him just because of the drop in the fumble, right? Huge drop, huge fumble, huge mistakes that probably led to the loss in that game against the Bills. You can debate on whose fault that actually was. But I'm not saying trade him just because I'm mad about that. We would have had these conversations anyway. What I'm saying to trade him because is you can save $11 million by cutting or trading Andrews before the 2025 season. And I think regardless of what happened on Sunday night, Andrews could have gone off for 6 touchdowns and 300 yards receiving. Maybe if it was that good, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But he could have had just a normal game, a good game, a solid game. And I think I still would have been having these combos, okay? And when you just look at the financials, I think it's obvious why this is kind of the perfect time to cut ties with him, okay? He's entering a contract year. He's set to earn $11 million this season, a $5.9 million dead cap, $16.9 million cap hit, and he has a $4 million roster bonus due on March 16th. And guys, I know what you're hearing. I'm going to tell you don't hear that because right now in your ears, you're hearing Joey thinks Mark Andrews sucks. Joey thinks Mark Andrews is the reason they lost that game. Joey thinks Mark Andrews should be gone. I'm not saying that, guys. I'm just saying that financially it makes sense because the Ravens currently, they sit at $17.3 million in cap space. That might sound like a lot of money because I've never seen that amount of money in my entire life, and I probably never will. But that's only good enough for 23rd in the NFL, okay? And like I said before, Mark is a legend. Mark will be remembered forever, okay? He is engraved in the history books as the franchise leader in touchdown catches. That's not going to change, but I just think this makes more financial sense, okay? So what should Baltimore do? You tell me. Should they trade him? Should they keep him? If you think trade him, type T for trade. If you think keep him, go ahead, give me a K for keep. Step 2 on our off-season plan, perfect off-season plan, I think you should re-sign Ronnie Stanley, okay? And I know this one isn't like an unpopular opinion. Ronnie Stanley played his best football in his career this year. His first time being healthy in a long time. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But if you look at the PFF grades, you can see in pass blocking, he's a top 20 tackle, top 21 tackle. Overall, he's top 40, right? He's better than the majority of the guys getting snaps in the NFL. But the most important part of this season, in my opinion, was the health factor, okay? It was the first time in his career that he's played every game in a season. And you can see since 2020, those injuries have really been rearing their ugly heads, okay? 6 games played, then 1 game played, 11-13, and then you have 17 games played this season. Now, I will say it is a risk because it's going to probably cost you a pretty penny, but also left tackles don't just go on trees. Speaking of that pretty penny, though, that's the challenging part because he is, and he will be, the top available tackle on the market. And that will likely drive the price up significantly, okay? So my contract projection for what Ronnie Stanley will most likely get either from Baltimore or somebody else who desperately needs a tackle, either at the right tackle or left tackle position, is 3 years, $60 million, okay? I think you got to take into account the age. He's 30 years old. I think you got to take into account the injury history as well. I think that will drive the price down a little bit, possibly a hometown discount with Baltimore. But at the most part, I don't think you're getting them cheaper for anything than less than $20 million. And Jeremy Fowler tends to agree with me. This is what he had to say. He said, Stanley will be hard to re-sign. He has had a resurgent season, and lesser tackles are getting $20 million or more per year. Plus, the Ravens traditionally haven't been afraid to go young along their offensive line. This could be it after 9 seasons in Baltimore. And you heard Jeremy Fowler, right? He doesn't think this is going to happen, but I think this needs to happen. There is nothing quite like consistency on an offensive line. There's nothing quite like consistency at that left tackle position for an all-pro quarterback, and Ronnie Stanley can be that and has been that this year for Lamar Jackson, okay? So what do you say? What should the Ravens do with Ronnie Stanley? Should they sign him? Or should they just pass on him and let him hit free agency? You let me know in the comment section down below. Before we get into anything else, the rest of our 3 points for our perfect offseason plan, I got to talk about the sponsor of today's video. There's our good friends over at Game Time. It is the best place to go because it has the best seats for the lowest prices guaranteed. And the big game, guys, is almost here. And if you want to get tickets to it locked down, use our friends at Game Time, because I can promise you there's nothing that can quite compare to the rush and excitement you feel watching your team win a playoff game either at home or on the road. And if you want to have that memory for the rest of your life, that's where Game Time can help out. The connection you feel to your team, city, and fellow fans around you in those electric playoff environments leads to bonds that last a lifetime. Game Time has an awesome new feature. It's called Game Time Picks, and that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats that you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The tool highlights the best deals, including great and amazing deals, which are the highest value seats at the time. For some events, Game Time Picks also identifies a super deal, which is the best seat value in the venue. There's so many things that I love about Game Time, but I just love the fact that you can see the view from your seat. Okay, guys, I can't tell you how many sporting events I've been to, whether it's a baseball game, basketball game, football game, where there's something blocking my view, and I'm sitting there thinking, you know what? I wouldn't have bought tickets to this if I would have known this was going to be the seat. And that's the great thing about Game Time is you can see your seat before you even buy the ticket. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. The link to this promo is in the comments and description of today's video. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. So number 3, I think this team has to draft a pass rusher, okay? And I know what you're saying. I know what you're thinking. Because on the surface, at like a 300-foot view of it all, this pass rush and this defense, honestly, they had a pretty great year, okay? Team sacks, 54, second best in the NFL. Team sack percentage, 7.7. Fifth best in the NFL. Kyle Van Noy had 12.5 sacks. Odafe Owe had 10 sacks. You had 2 guys get into the double digits, but it's when you take a deeper look, you see that maybe this pass rush was not as good as we all kind of thought it was along the season. So if you look at pass rush win rate, which is meaning what percent of your pass rushes do you beat the tackle or the offensive lineman that's guarding you, or it's blocking you, within 2.5 seconds. They only did it 33% of the time, 29th best in the NFL. Run stop win rate, okay? 29.0, 26th best in the NFL. They had a quarterback pressure rate of 31.4%, 25th best in the NFL, and their average time to pressure was 2.88 seconds. That was dead last in the National Football League. So something needs to change. Okay, because you're getting sacks, you're just not pressuring the quarterback enough. And I know I harped on this before the Bills game, and I know I harped on this during the Bills game, but that was going to be a key to win that game, is to pressure Josh Allen, and you weren't able to do it. He had all day long to just kind of stand, pat the ball, and deliver a strike, and he did it, and you lost the game. Okay, so my top picks when I look at this NFL draft, I got 3 guys that I see a possibility of falling to that pick number 27, okay? Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State, James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee, go Vols, and then Jalen Walker out of Georgia. All 3 of those guys had pretty solid years. Jack Sawyer, I would say the best consistency, but Jalen Walker led the 3 of sacks. James Pierce Jr. led the 3 in tackles for loss. And honestly, guys, I'd love any of those guys to fall to 27. I think James Pierce might be my pick of the litter, and I'm not just saying that because I went to Tennessee and I love the Vols. But guys, his ceiling is just incredibly high, okay? Before this year, he was mocked as like the number 1 or number 2 edge rusher to be taken, and he still has all those things that you can't teach, like the size and like the speed. I think it'd be more of a risk, but I think the ceiling is just higher for him. But anyway, even if it's not him, I think you got to draft a pass rusher in round 1 or round 2 because that's going to be critical in the 2025 NFL season. Help us out, okay? Help me out. Help me convince Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh. Do you want Baltimore to draft a pass rusher? If so, if you're like me, hit that thumbs up button, like the video, let's send a message. Number 4, and I don't want to say the most important of all these, but I really want this one to happen, guys. You got to make Monken stay, okay? It's just like no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This was the historically second best offense in the history of this league, only behind the greatest show on turf. Okay? And when you look at their total EPA, expected points added per play was plus 0.17. Best in the NFL. Their expected points added per pass, best in the NFL. Expected points added per rush, 4th best in the NFL. They had more yards per game than anybody else, and they tied for second with 62 touchdown scores. And just look what Monken did with the big 3. I get it. Those guys are going to go get yards. They're going to go get touchdowns wherever they go, but not like this, ladies and gentlemen. Almost 5,000 total yards for Lamar, 2,000 total yards for Derrick Henry, and Zay Flowers had his best season yet. These guys were absolutely unreal, and it's all because of the offensive mastermind, Todd Monken, making the ship go, okay? The thing is people across the league have seen that, and they said, you know what, maybe he can change our offense. Let's see if we can get him in here, right? He's interviewed with the Jaguars job. He interviewed for the Bears job. They just hired Ben Johnson, though, so he's not going to go there. And then the Raiders have requested to interview him. He has not accepted that request yet, okay? So my take on this whole thing, my take on making Monken stay is, yes, I know what you're saying in the comment section. He had a bit of questionable calls in that playoff game. He had some questionable calls along the entirety of the year, but guys, it wasn't many. Okay, truly, it was not many, and what he did with this offense this last year, it's history book stuff. You got to keep that guy in the building. I think keeping consistency in that offensive coordinator is the best for your quarterback. So, keep Monken in Baltimore, baby. And then number 5, my final step to the perfect offseason plan. I think you go snag a wide receiver in free agency. Okay, I think you go get a piece that could fit in with Zay Flowers, that could fit in with Rashad Bateman. I don't think Nelson Aguilar is a guy that gets re-signed. I think there's a chance that this team trades Mark Andrews. So that's 1 less pass catcher, 2 less pass catchers. Go get some guys that are kind of different skill position players than Zay Flowers is. And so I got some favorites in that list, okay? My favorites are Chris Godwin, Elijah Moore, Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, and DeAndre Hopkins. Of those 5, my 4 favorites are those bottom 3. Because in my opinion, a guy like Keenan Allen, a guy like Josh Palmer, and DeAndre Hopkins, those guys are all kind of different receivers than anything you've got on this roster right now, okay? You've got the quick guys, the small guys, the guys who run 4.3 40s and are absolute burners, like Zay Flowers, like Devontae Walker, like Tylan Wallace. But you don't have any of those guys who are much over 6 foot that are just go up, grab it, possession, deep ball receivers. And so I think if you bring in a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, if you bring in a guy like Josh Palmer, if you bring in a guy like Keenan Allen, I think those 3 guys will give Lamar Jackson a different look at receiver than he's ever had, okay? So drop your take down below. Name a free agent you want Baltimore to sign. Let me know. It can be any of the guys I said. It can be any guy you want. Just let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. I really do appreciate every single one of you. And again, like I said at the top of the show, we're bringing the heat all off season long, okay? Every month, every day, until this team kicks off. We'll give you off-season coverage, the best anywhere on YouTube. So if you haven't already, make sure to hit that sub button.